Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of Facts on the Ground. My name is Misty Winston, and I am joined as always by my co-host Jesse Zerowell. We have a very special guest today. I'm super excited. We have a Guatemalan filmmaker and journalist who is also the co-founder of both Infosec Bytes and Guerrilla Pictures. He has a new film out, very recent, called "The War on Journalism: The Case of Julian Assange," and he's just an all-around badass. So I'd just like to welcome Juan Passarelli. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for calling me a badass. That's the best description I've gotten so far. And thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. So Juan, I'd like to start with, how did your solidarity with Julian and WikiLeaks start? And what was the genesis of this film, The War on Journalism, which you recently released?
So I was lucky enough to have been born in a family in Guatemala that was, of upper middle class. And my father told me that I was allowed to go to university in Britain if I chose something that would give me some money. So I wanted to study photography. I did business studies. And when I came back to Guatemala, I became really good in advertising. And I was doing these strategies that, one example is we were launching this new energy drink, and the advertising and marketing was so successful that the bottling company ran out of bottles. So I started noticing the power that communications had. And then this beer company contacted me and said, we want you, we've had this market research. We know that minors are drinking, and what we want you to do is to make sure that they drink beer instead of rum. And I actually did it, and I feel awful about that. I made Facebook games. I made contests in online. I was pioneering in the internet advertising, and this strategy worked. And I was so ashamed of myself. I said, fuck this shit. I'm not going back to that again. And I know that communication has an incredibly important part to help the world or to move the masses. So I'm going to apply my knowledge to something that is actually of use instead of just making money for billionaire companies. So I came to Britain to study TV journalism in hopes of getting investigative tools and filmmaking tools. And as part of my degree, I had to do an internship. And I decided to do it at the Center for Investigative Journalism, which was run by Gavin McFadden, who can be considered the father of WikiLeaks. He and his wife were the protectors of WikiLeaks staff. And actually, quite a lot of the WikiLeaks staff came from the Center for Investigative Journalism. I met Sarah Harrison and Joseph Farrell a few months before they joined WikiLeaks. And Sarah knew that I was a filmmaker, so just after I finished my degree, she called me up and said, would you like to come and film us? And that was October 2011, and I filmed them prior to the Iraq war logs release. And I mean, I knew about WikiLeaks before, but I did not understand the historical context that it was, its place in history. I didn't understand it until I started seeing it, until I started filming it, and I was in this world where I was like, wow, this is history changing. This is marking a special event in history. And I've always wanted to be a part of a group that helps change the world for the better. So even though I wasn't I mean, I wasn't WikiLeaks. I was allowed in as somebody that could document what was going on, and I've been filming them for 10 years.
And I think that that's something that when you said that, you didn't realize how big it was, I don't think anybody really did. I don't even know if Julian did. And I mean, you know him, and maybe he did, but just the massive, shockwaves that it has sent through history. You're right. It really was history changing. So when you started to approach this film, which the war on journalism, the case of Julian Assange, did you know how you wanted to approach it? Like because it's so good. You managed to pack so much easily digestible information into less than 40 minutes. And so was that kind of the approach you were taking from the get-go, was to just try to, inform as much as you could? Or, did you have, some sort of method to the madness and in the approach to the story?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I had not seen Julian since he was arrested. I was a bit taking some time off. And then I suddenly came back and said, I'm seeing this campaign, Don't Extradite campaign, and they don't have any video, and I think I can contribute to that. So I started working with them, and my first idea was there has to be a narrative that explains it from beginning to end, which actually I wanted to do from the beginning, and it took me, since October last year to actually finish this. Because there were also a lot of other needs in the campaign, and as it happens, I'm a bit of a workaholic as well, so I tend to assume more roles. But what I knew that there was a need for a clear, just description about the case without all the, 10 years of propaganda that is very sophisticated from 5 different governments: the US, the UK, Sweden, Ecuador, and Australia, all pumping out propaganda, apart from the fact that WikiLeaks has been publishing, tens of thousands of documents. I think they have 10 million, actually, 10 million documents published. That was the video I did for the 10th anniversary. So I just tried to strip everything down and make it into something as simple as possible. This is a man that 10 years ago revealed war crimes, and that now is being charged as a spy for doing exactly that. That was my goal, and I wanted to reach people that are normal, not like me that is 24/7 thinking about WikiLeaks. But just hear it from the news, and they're probably quite misinformed because the media has not played a very crucial role in. Well, there's a big part of the media that is just a megaphone for government officials. So it's very easy to just fall into this trap of not actually understanding, because you have a life and you don't have time to really investigate every single issue that you might think is important, because you have kids, you have family, you have work. So I was trying to reach people like that, and I was also trying to reach people that were 8 when the revelations happened, and now they're 18, or where they were 10 and now they're 20, and they have the right to vote, and they are participating in the political discourse and starting to participate and educate themselves. And I figured this was a time to remind everybody that this is what happened 10 years ago. It changed the way we saw the world. We saw the wars that are still going on, by the way. And the people who are in prison or have been imprisoned are the people who allegedly leaked the material and the person who published it, not the war criminals who killed, maimed, tortured, and created all sorts of corruption and havoc. So that was my intention. Just as a side note, my brother, who is also a filmmaker, says I'm an editor that does not like to cut. So another reason why it took so long was that I did like 15 versions of the film, and I kept on showing it to people to try to understand what they thought and what their perception, to actually be able to pack everything in. And then I packed everything so tightly that it was so intense that nothing could get through, and I had to spread it out again to give people time to process each part of. And I think it's still very information packed. I think you have to watch it twice if you don't know about the subject too.
You did a great job, and it's so funny that you're saying that you made like 15 different versions of it, because just before we started talking to you, Jesse and I were just kind of going over some notes and stuff, and I told him that the film is so great because it does a great job of packing information into this kind of short time frame, and I said my ADHD brain could never accomplish that. So it's kind of good to hear that you just didn't do that really quickly, and it was all.
I have ADHD and I'm dyslexic as well, so
it's just funny that you said it, because we were just talking about it.
And I think the chronological aspect of it, the chronological order that you were able to put it in, is extremely helpful, not just for people like us who are familiar with what's happening with Julian, but for people who might not know anything or might know a little bit. I think the chronology is important, because if mainstream media ever covers the story, there's no context to it. There's no year given. There's no time frame given. It's maybe something he was alleged to have done back in 2011, and then it's what's happening now with his hearing at Belmarsh. But I don't have cable TV, so I don't watch mainstream media, but the chronological aspect, I think, is extremely important for anybody who's interested in this case, for them to be able to wrap their head around what's going on. So I'm curious, how important was that to you, Juan, to give a sense of chronology, a sense of order to this story that's pretty much been all over the place when it comes to not just mainstream media, but independent media?
Yeah, well, I actually started with a film that started from the beginning and then went all the way up to today. And one of my colleague filmmakers who I respect a lot, Niels Ladefoged, he told me, you should start from today and then go back. And I did that. And I think it's important because we understand today. We understand what's happening in the protests in the US when journalists were being attacked with bullets. We understand that in Australia, one of the main television stations was raided by the Secret Services of Australia. We understand that Glenn Greenwald was almost prosecuted, or at least charged with the same carbon copy indictment that Julian is being charged on. And also, there has been so much about 2016 and the election concerning the DNC emails and Podesta emails and Hillary Clinton, that I thought it was very, very important for people to understand that this case has nothing to do with that. This case has nothing to do with Sweden. It has nothing to do with Russia or Trump or any of that sort, or Hillary Clinton. It concerns publications that were done in 2010, and there are just 5 of those. The rules of engagement, because they didn't want to use the helicopter, which is obviously murder, so they substituted the helicopter for the rules of engagement that was published of Iraq of the same year, and that show that what the pilots in that video did was murder the Afghan and Iraq war logs, the cables of the State Department, and the Guantanamo Bay prison files. That is all that is being, that Julian is being prosecuted for. And he's being called an enemy spy for revealing war crimes and torture.
Yeah, the irony of it is grotesque. And one of the things that struck me about your film was the several clips you included of US officials essentially very cynically, very psychopathically responding to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, and Julian Assange being imprisoned. There's the one segment where I don't remember the official's name, but he's standing at a podium and it's at the State Department. And
Pompeo?
No, it's not Pompeo.
I think I know what you're about to say.
One of the spokespersons saying that these documents belong to the U.S. government.
Sorry?
Is it Jeff Morrell, the spokesperson that said that WikiLeaks should return those documents?
It was the segment where he says something about transparency and the whole crowd starts laughing as well.
Oh, yes.
An exercise in democracy, I think he said, or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that was his last day as a spokesperson, by the way.
Well, good. But
I'm so happy that clip exists. I mean, it really does show the necessity for real investigative journalists to be out there shining a light into the secrets that the powerful have, our representatives have, because if they can keep secrets, they will, and those secrets will involve corruption, they will involve mistakes, and they will involve ill treatment and all the dirty stuff that they can do. So they will hide their own crimes if they are allowed.
And we were just talking about this the other day. I don't know if it was with Jesse or not, but they have access to every single one of our text messages, our emails, our phone calls, they can listen to you on your smart TV and your phone, and but they don't want any transparency for themselves. And if you dare try to expose their literal, war crimes, we're talking about war crimes. This is I can't think of anything worse. That's pretty horrific. But they don't want you to be able to have any access to that information. But yeah, I think also it's really striking in the beginning of the film too, and I'm glad that you kind of approach it this way. But there's several clips of the recent attacks on journalists who are covering the protests. They're getting pepper sprayed, and they're getting beaten, and they're getting shot with, who knows what, all kinds of stuff. And people often don't equate that fight to Julian's fight because it's been, kind of pushed into their heads that he's not a journalist, but that is the exact same fight. That's the same fight. It's a true fight against journalism. Was that an intentional connection that you decided to make at the beginning of the film to show how that, this is a fight for free press, a fight for free speech?
Yeah. That's obvious by the title. I think it's called The War on Journalism. And I didn't say America's war on journalism or UK's war on journalism. This is a Western trend towards authoritarianism. Yes, led by the United States at the moment, but we can see it in a lot of Western countries. The UK is proposing a new law, which is an espionage law, which would allow the UK to extradite publishers and other entities that are non-state entities for revealing secrets or obtaining secrets or just having secrets. Barton Gellman from the Washington Post, I think he's at the Atlantic now, but he was, when he did the Snowden documents, he was at the Washington Post. He mentioned that he solicits and obtains information, sometimes classified information, or what the US calls classified information. And that is exactly what Julian Assange did. Julian Assange, the MOJ under the Obama administration said that it could not differentiate between what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks did and what the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Guardian did concerning those same materials. So this question about whether he's a journalist or not, anybody can be a journalist. You're a journalist right now interviewing me because you're talking about current affairs. I mean, if you're doing more investigation, less investigation, what is being done is obtaining documents that sometimes you solicit, you ask for information, you get information, you corroborate that that information is true, and if it's in the public interest, you publish. That is the definition of journalism. The International Federation of Journalism agrees that Julian Assange is a journalist. Your own Ministry of Justice in the Obama administration agreed with that. The NUJ here in London agrees with that. And it doesn't even matter because he is also a publisher. And the First Amendment protects everybody, not only publishers, not only journalists, it protects you and me. But nowadays, the MOJ is saying that it does not protect Julian Assange because he's a foreigner. So, whoops, all of us that do journalism and might know something about the crime about that the US is carrying out, well, we're not protected by the First Amendment. And the Espionage Act does not allow First Amendment protections.
Yeah,
I think that's something that people miss a lot too, is that they're essentially saying that journalists around the world are, you know, under the rule of our law, but they don't have the same rights and protections. So, you know, the United States can go get anybody they want at any time for saying something they don't like. It doesn't, you're right, it doesn't have to just be a journalist. If you're just putting information out into the public sphere, they can haul you in. And if they just don't like what you're saying, I mean, this really is an attack on your ability to know things, you know? And I think that gets lost a lot with people, that they're not seeing the bigger picture, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the editorial of the editorial board of the New York Times published a very serious editorial saying that the charges on WikiLeaks were attack on the First Amendment. This is serious. The New York Times, the Guardian did the same. The ex-editor of the Guardian, Alan Rusbridger, has written 3 op-eds about this. It is serious, not only for journalists, for anyone who believes in democracy, because if they take the right of journalists to publish information about our representatives, they actually are taking away your right to receive information that will help you make an informed decision about what your government is doing with your taxes and with your votes. That is the end of democracy. That's it. I mean, and I mean, I don't like to compare other countries that run themselves in a different manner, but the media seems to consider Russia and China as evil and dictatorial, and that's exactly where the United States is heading, and Europe and Australia and the West in general.
I think the US is already there, and so are several other of the countries you mentioned. But I wanted to go back to the collateral murder video and something that John Pilger in your film discusses, which is this 360 degrees method of annihilation. which I think not only applies to what you see in the collateral murder video, where it's almost 15, 20 minutes of
Well,
straight,
it's actually 39 minutes.
39 minutes,
And it
right,
covers 2 attacks.
right. And I see that sort of 360-degree annihilation approach extended to Julian Assange as well. He's being attacked from all sides, psychologically, physically, legally. His whatever hearings he's had so far are farcical at best. I'm wondering if you agree with that, if you can see that vector between the US's all-out annihilation of the Iraqi population and people, journalists there who are trying to tell the truth, and somebody like Julian Assange, who is also revealing these crimes.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the 360-degree killing. This was actually a quote from the US soldier on the ground who picked up the 2 wounded children, extremely wounded children that he was asking to take to a very high-tech military hospital that they had, and he was not allowed to take him there, and they were just taken to a nearby hospital. The only reason these kids survived was because his dad threw himself on top of them. This guy ended up with very bad PTSD, and I'm very, very sorry I don't remember his name, but he said that the rules of engagement were 360 degrees. Now, concerning, sorry, I'm just gonna pause for a second because my dog keeps on barking to open the door.
Okay.
No, that's actually, Jesse, that like you just blew my mind, because that's such a great point to make. I think this is how the US, well, empire in general, approaches all of their adversaries, all of their, enemies, their perceived enemies. It's a 360-degree assault. I mean, we've talked about this several times, both on the show and in our private conversations, but this has been a 10-year propaganda extravaganza against one dude. I mean, this is one guy. And
Yeah.
if you go back and really examine how much time, money, effort, resources, all of those things have been spent to destroy a single human being slowly and systematically, it's crazy. I mean, this has been a sustained assault against this one human being.
Yeah, so the second part of your question, which I was getting to before my dog very rudely interrupted,
Don't worry about it.
was that there's this new term called lawfare, which means law warfare, right? In 2011, WikiLeaks published the emails of a private intelligence company called Stratfor. Within those emails, we found out that one of the strategies that they were proposing was to keep Julian in legal cases for the next 25 years as a part of the strategy to destroy WikiLeaks. I mean, this has in part worked, but WikiLeaks has won in the fact that WikiLeaks continues to run and continues to publish. There have been in Australia what they called an all government or investigation against WikiLeaks. In the United States, the Pentagon had 110 people task force investigating WikiLeaks, investigating the cables, and really trying to find one person that the information that was published was damaged. And they had to state under oath in the Chelsea Manning case that they did not find anyone. So, the intelligence services have been after him. I'll talk to you about it, about the CIA afterwards, but the intelligence services of all the Five Eyes Alliance have been coordinating to destroy WikiLeaks, the State Department, the judicial systems, every part of these, world's most powerful governments have been trying to silence and destroy WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. And it's only because of the public, really, that we have been able to, in whatever is left of the rule of law, that WikiLeaks has been able to continue to run.
Yeah, I agree. I think the public plays a huge and essential part in not just providing solidarity for Julian, but calling attention to his cause. And I think that people with large platforms like Roger Waters have done a huge and noble service to the free press, to free speech, to Julian's plight. And again, as you said, I think the public is a huge part of this fight. So you mentioned the CIA.
My favorite topic.
Let's talk about the CIA and UC Global spying on Julian in London's Ecuadorian embassy, which you cover quite extensively and with some very interesting surveillance footage in your documentary.
Okay, so we have to understand how this came to be. The Ecuadorian embassy did not have any protection when, or security, when Julian Assange first walked in the door in 2012. The Ecuadorian government needed to provide security, and it was faced with a problem, which was they would not allow visas to anyone in the security apparatus of Correa's government. So that posed a very big question. Rafael Correa had hired a Spanish company to protect him and his family when he was abroad, called UC Global. It was a very small private security company. So what happened was the Ecuadorian government needed a company that could provide security and be European, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to be in the country. So what they did was they hired the same company that was protecting Rafael Correa, and we later found out that they were also spying on him, to protect the embassy. From the beginning, it was quite clear that their intention was more to surveil Assange rather than to surveil what was going outside, or their outside threats, which was the police and other intelligence agencies. It is very clear that from 2012 up to 2019, the London embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy in London, was the most surveilled place on the planet Earth, which is surprising in itself because it was just a lonely journalist sitting in there. But we also knew that when Ecuador decided to grant Julian Assange asylum, there was a threat by the UK government, an official threat by the UK government, saying that they were going to storm in. And it was only because there were the Home Office and the Foreign Office were at odds with this that it didn't happen, because the Foreign Office was afraid that if they stormed into the Ecuadorian office, their offices could be stormed in other countries. So that was the only reason why it didn't happen. So this guy, David Morales, who was the owner of UC Global, flies to a security fair hosted at a convention center owned by Las Vegas Sand. The owner of that company is Sheldon Adelson, one of Trump's and Pompeo's mega donors. And he met someone called Sohar Lahav, who is the head, is or was the head of the security, the bodyguards of Sheldon Adelson, and they become quite close friends, and they start liaising with the security apparatus of the United States from then on. So Mr. Morales starts delivering access to the cameras and IP addresses, both to Ecuador, to his offices in Spain, and a third IP address in the United States, which the court in Spain has asked the U.S. government to identify, and they have denied it. But it seems to be in the area of Virginia, so there's not a lot to say about that.
Probably.
Also, whenever Morales took his trips to the U.S., he would send instructions from a static IP address from the Venetian Hotel, part of the Las Vegas Sands company. And in one of those emails, I'm actually mentioned as part of a list of people that should be of utmost importance to investigate, because I was a frequent visitor. I helped Julian with his video conferencing, which is why I prefer Zoom than Skype, because at some point during 2013, about 20 occasions, we would set up the connection for 1 hour, and as soon as Julian said hello, bloop, it would cut out.
Huh.
So I started doing a lot of research. Zoom turned out to be better. I don't trust Zoom, but it's a little bit better, I guess, than Skype and Microsoft. Well, sorry, I'm deviating a little bit. So from 2016 onwards, at least, we know that, well, they changed the cameras. They changed cameras to cameras that could have audio capability, and they hid microphones inside the meeting room below a fire extinguisher, and even inside the women's toilet, where Julian would have conversations with his lawyers. He would turn on the tap water and have as private as conversations as he could have in a very small, very surveilled place. I remember his lawyer telling me that he would tell Julian, I don't think these guys, these guys are a small company from, the inlands of the suburbs of Spain. They're not technically capable of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says he was wrong. Even the bathroom, the only kind of safe space with all four walls had a microphone inside a box of a Christmas tree.
It makes one wonder where this podunk firm got their technical equipment from.
Well, I think we know at
that
this point.
There was PowerPoint presentation sent in English to the from the Venetian Hotel to the workers of UZ Global to set the cameras up and set the technology to certain parameters that they required. And hard drives were flown in and out of the country, and David Morales would go very frequently to the United States. I mean, there's a lot of records about that. And I mean, this trial is going ahead in Spain as we speak.
So when you brought up actually the fact that they were bugging the whole embassy, that actually made me think of something that I really wanted to talk to you about. I don't think that a lot of people understand how many legitimately legal reasons this case should be tossed out immediately. They spied on his private meetings between himself and his lawyers. That's a huge, just assault on his rights. The fact that they were spying on everybody, the fact that it's a political case, the fact that, I mean, there's so many reasons why this case is garbage. And I don't think that people recognize and again, you're right. It's the people who have jobs and kids and they don't know. That's what I've been trying to get people to understand is that most of the people in your life just don't know. And if they understood what's happening, they would support Julian Assange. It's a no-brainer issue. But yeah, just can you kind of talk about how there the farce that this all is, the kangaroo court that this all is, and you know, kind of how you think that that's been allowed to continue?
Okay, so first of all, I want to address a point to tell people that this is actually real. Um, and it's really, really, really hard for people to comprehend that this is real. And I know this very personally because I've been telling my parents for years, you know, I'm being surveilled. This telephone that I'm talking to you is being surveilled. And it was only until my name was published in an Italian newspaper that my mom freaked out. And that was last year, you know, 2019, when I've been talking about 10 years of surveillance. There were also plans to kidnap Julian from inside the embassy and even poison him. And I mean, these are Russian strategies, and the US was planning on doing these things. Right? They were a planning stage, but they were being talked about. This is just outrageous that the CIA and the private security contractor would be even discussing the idea of killing a journalist who is in, you know, protected space of a foreign jurisdiction. So yes, they have been spying on his lawyers. If he is extradited to the United States, not only will he face a jury that is made up of 80% CIA, NSA, Homeland Security, FBI, Pentagon, and US contractors and their families as a jury, but the court would be in secret and he would be placed on special administrative measures, which means he would be isolated completely and kept under strict lockdown, and his lawyers wouldn't even be able to talk about the case, and the case would be held in secret. So that's how bad the situation is within if he gets all the way to the US. Now, in the UK and the US extradition treaty does not allow for political extraditions. It doesn't get, you know, more political than espionage, right? But still the case is going on. He's not seen his lawyers for 6 months. There was a superseding indictment that was published on June the 24th, but the court in England only received it on the 14th of August. That was 3 weeks before the hearing that starts tomorrow. He has not read that indictment. He hasn't read his charges. He hasn't been able to see his lawyers for 6 months, and he's going to see them for the first time tomorrow at court. This is not a right to defend. You know, he's not being given the right to defend himself. He is being psychologically tortured. This is not me saying it. This is the special rapporteur on torture and 2 other medical experts that examined him individually and said that he displayed every symptom of a person that has been psychologically tortured. The UK government has done absolutely nothing on this. And this is not the way that a country that respects human rights should behave. And there should be at least an investigation. There was just a tweet and a little statement that was given to Niels Melzer, one pager given to Niels Melzer 5 months after he submitted his findings. The UN Special Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has stated twice that Julian Assange has been arbitrarily detained for 10 years and that he should be released immediately and that he should be compensated. This seems to not apply to the UK because the UK seems to think that it is above the UN mandate, which they signed on to. But when it's Venezuela, or another country that they call a regime rather than a government, well, then they should obey the UN, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is how we're seeing the case now. The positive sides. This, apart from him being a political, I want to emphasize this. He is a political prisoner in the United Kingdom who is a journalist who revealed war crimes, and he's being sought after for being considered an enemy spy. That is the actual facts of the matter. There is an increasing support in the political sense. There are a lot of politicians who have started to state that he should be free. Former prime ministers in Australia, former foreign secretaries. There's been presidents in Latin America who have stated that he should be free. There's a whole bunch of ministers of parliament here. There's actually a group in the UK of ministers of parliament, cross-party ministers of parliament, trying to put a motion forward to discuss this in parliament. So there is a lot of support. There is a great support from Amnesty International, which is, I think, a great victory, from Human Rights Watch, from Reporters Without Borders, from the International Federation of Journalists, and a whole bunch of other groups. I mean, if you look at don'textraditeassange.org, you will see the most crazy list of organizations supporting. You never see all those different organizations supporting one cause at the same time. That is something to look forward to. And I think this case is going to get worse before it gets better, but the political pressure is mounting. There are political observers from all over the world who are following this case closely and are mounting pressure on the UK government. And the media is really starting to go head on with this case. Just today, there was an article on the most read newspaper in the United Kingdom, which is the Daily Mail, and its most read edition is called the Mail on Sunday. And there is a 4-page spread about Julian and the case and his family, and Julian and his partner Stella Morris are on the cover. So this is something that we should really consider as a great victory. The Guardian is starting to publish this information. The Times of London has just published for the first time a big article about the espionage of UC Global. So there's resources that are starting to be invested, not only just on the everyday court reporting, but on actual investigations. And this is where we want to head to. And we still have to work on the United States. I think there's a lot of work to do in there, but we're going the right way. And this, whatever happens in this case, which is going to last 4 weeks, it doesn't matter, because this is the smallest case. A conservative MP told me it should have never been tried on a magistrate level court. This is ridiculous. No, it's one single magistrate making a decision that is not only judicial, but it's really a political decision. This should be tried at higher courts. And if Julian wins or the US wins, there's going to be an appeal. If Julian wins, this is a really disgusting part. If Julian wins, this does not allow him freedom straight away to keep on fighting his case as a free man, or at least in bail conditions. But rather, he will most likely stay in jail unless a judge actually gives him bail.
Wow, those are some pretty dismal details. I was aware of some of those, but not all of those. but I think it's good that anybody who's watching and listening understands the full extent, the full horror of what Julian's experiencing. And I'm wondering, Juan, if you can talk about, perhaps this question has several parts, but journalists who've benefited from what WikiLeaks has released, the work Assange and his colleagues have done, those journalists who use that information and have been silent with regard to his persecution, those nonprofit organizations which were more than happy to host him in 2010, 2011, and are now silent about him. And also, I might catch flack for this, but I don't give a shit because I think it's a question that needs to be asked. Edward Snowden, in your documentary, it's mentioned that once WikiLeaks gave Edward Snowden protection and agreed to work with him and release the information that he had obtained.
WikiLeaks never released the information of Edward Snowden.
Okay.
No, WikiLeaks, they just helped him get to safety, basically.
They didn't want to see another Chelsea Manning happening.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure that the precedent was set so that other whistleblowers could understand that they could do that without having to suffer the torture and abuse of a regime that treats whistleblowers the way the United States does. And actually, the final destination of Edward Snowden was Ecuador, but it turned out that mid-flight, the Hong Kong authorities decided to get rid of this hot potato because there was an extradition request for him, but it was not filled correctly. And they published that he was mid-air on going to Russia. And it was chosen that Russia was the best route because of the flight path and which airspaces were going to be traveled through. He was trapped in Moscow. So literally the United States put Edward Snowden, the jurisdiction that is definitely not going to extradite him to the United States.
Right. Well, going off of that, I was struck by a statement that was made in your film that Edward Snowden's freedom essentially came at the expense of Julian Assange's freedom. I'm wondering if that's in your film. That doesn't necessarily mean you agree with that, but do you agree with that? And if
well,
so, if not, can you elaborate on it?
Yeah, sure. I think that Julian understands that. This statement was made by an international human rights lawyer called Renata Avila. She's also a fellow Guatemalan. And she's worked on the Assange case. When she mentions that, her actual words are, in the moment that Edward Snowden's escape happens, the diplomatic doors were shut in the United Kingdom, saying there was a negotiation for a free pass or a protected route towards the airport so that he could so that Julian could get a plane to Ecuador. As soon as the Snowden thing happened, those diplomatic ties were broken because it was just way too much for the UK to handle considering its main ally is the United States, and they tend to follow whatever the US says. And Julian was aware of that, but I don't know. I have never met or know of anybody more principled and courageous than Julian. So he'd rather give his life away than compromise his principles, his values. And his values are that people should be allowed to release information of abusive practices and be safe. So he saved that man with the help of a courageous woman called Sarah Harrison.
So that actually kind of brings me to, I know you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. But that kind of brings me, I think a lot of what gets lost in this too is just Julian's humanity. People don't see him as a person anymore, if they ever did. I mean, some people, obviously, that we do. But yeah, I just think that he's seen as the character that has been made of him in the press and by government officials, and the decade-long propaganda extravaganza that has been going on against him. And so can you just kind of, I mean, you've known him for 10 years. Can you just kind of tell us like a little bit about who he is as a human, like as a friend and as just a dude in the world? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he's quite private, which is very funny because he's volunteered himself to be the lightning rod of WikiLeaks and take all the flack and attacks. But he's quite a private person. He's very gentle. He is extremely knowledgeable. I mean, when you just sit and have a chat, you could chat for hours and he'll come up with ideas or ways of seeing things that you just, somebody like me, who is a regular mind, would never, you would never imagine to see it that way. And you're just like, oh, that's very interesting. He has a great sense of humor. He has a lot of friends and he loves children. I saw him with, I didn't actually see him with his children because that was kept very private. But I did see him with the children of rapper MIA, who brought her children to the embassy once.
Oh, no, I didn't know about that.
Sorry?
I said that's cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I saw him, playing around with them. He immediately put them on the computer and started showing them little games and stuff that they could do on the computer. And, something that was very cool, I thought, is that we tend to talk to children like they're children. We even use different voices. He doesn't. He talks to them like adults. And they respond to that very well. And I mean, apart from that, he's a regular guy, There's in 10 situations, which I've lived many with him and the rest of the gang, there's a lot of comedy and a lot of intensity. And, you tend to kind of build a camaraderie with the people that are with you, and that's very special. And I mean, a lot of people that know him know that. He has a whole bunch of friends. It seems like he has a huge amount of enemies, but actually he does have a lot of friends and family. And his dad came every year to spend the holidays with him, and his dad is a wonderful man, very, very intellectual as well, John Shipton, fighting, giving up everything right now just to fight for Julian. He's going to be at court. And I'm going to be there to record his statements.
I wanted to ask you about that. Are you going to be at the hearing tomorrow?
I'm going to be there reporting for Don't Extradite Assange on live video.
Okay.
Twice a day, there's going to be statements. So after the lunch break and at the end of the day, when the case finishes at around 4 or 5 p.m. And there's also going to be a day recap type of show, probably half an hour, 40 minutes, just to keep people updated. That's going to be on the Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook of Don't Extradite Assange. And I'm also going to be, well, there's only 10 journalists allowed in courts because of COVID. This is fucking crazy. So they've given the rest of the journalists in the world a link so that they can see it live. Obviously, we cannot record anything because it's a British court, but we can tweet. So I'll try to do my best to tweet. Although if history is proven to be something that is repeated, we will see a shambles of technology. The journalists have been following this case in the case administrative hearings since February, and I think there was only one occasion where actually we were able to hear over a phone call what the proceedings were. Other times, journalists were locked out and just hearing elevator music, or just that, you know, the microphones were put in front of, were not, you know, lawyers weren't talking to the microphones, and the judge definitely doesn't talk to the microphone. So it's going to be really hard to report on this. And you'll see people like Kevin Gostola and other people that follow this case trying to do their best to use very poor resources. And I don't know if they do it on purpose or not. It almost feels like they do it on purpose right now, to avoid open justice. But we will do our best to keep you up to date. Yeah,
thank you for that. I spoke with journalist Tarek Haddad back in March.
Yeah, he's going to be there.
He was there in February to cover the initial segment of the hearings, and he reported just what you said about the interference that journalists had to deal with in order to just hear the basics of what was going on, just to follow the basics of what was going on. And again, we don't know if it's on purpose, but common sense dictates that it most likely is.
I can't say, I can't, what is it that they do? Agree or deny with that? I can't.
Right. I can't either, but it seems too obvious.
It's a pretty safe bet, I think, at this point. I mean, this has kind of been, I mean, it's all been a shit show. I mean, everything from the conflict of interest with, you know, the people involved, and it's all a hot mess. And I think it's a pretty safe bet that every single aspect of that hot mess is intentional. I think it's just par for the course. I mean, that's just me speculating, obviously, but I think it's a pretty safe thing, a pretty safe assumption to make, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know, Juan, the 10 whole journalists that are going to be in courtroom? Because all of my favorites are not included.
I don't know.
You don't know? Because nobody seems to know.
I'm wondering this question, if it's going to be a first come, first serve thing, or if or if they actually chose the journalists. Because if they chose a journalist, that's already quite disturbing, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is indeed.
So, so I think that it might be a just first come, first serve thing. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be one of them because I need to be outside doing live video and interviews. And I'm going to bring you on the first day the protest. There's going to be speakers at the protest, and we're going to be capturing all that. We're going to be talking to the supporters, and then we're going to be talking to anybody that has, you know, that we can find that has knowledge of the case to keep you as updated as possible.
I know a friend of the show, Mohammed El Mazi, is going to be there. I don't know if he's going to have access to the court, but he's going to be reporting from there. We interviewed him a few episodes back, and he's been producing some very good coverage regarding Assange hearing. So I know he'll be there, and I saw
a lot of great journalists will be there. I just hope some of them make it into the courtroom. That's my only concern. I would just like somebody that has a solid track record that I trust and that other people involved trust. I mean, if we could get at least a couple in there, that would be great because, you know, like Juan said, the technological issues are almost guaranteed. That's been the way this whole thing has, you know, progressed. So I don't think there's any reason why that should change now. So I'm just hoping that whatever the method is that they use to get people into the courtroom, I hope that, you know, a Kevin or a Mo or, you know, any of those people, oh, why didn't I just blank?
Taylor Hudak is going to be there as well.
Yes. But yeah, there are a lot of really great people who will be covering it. I just hope we can get at least a couple in the courtroom. That would be ideal.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, Juan, what can we expect from the hearing tomorrow and in the coming days and weeks? What do you think we can expect? I'm not asking you to make a prediction, but
Well, actually, it would be impossible for me to make one. I'm not a lawyer.
but based on what we know so far,
What I can tell you is that I expect surprises for sure. I expect that people at some points will be outraged. I have to tell the audience that Julian has the best legal team that he could possibly have. I know sometimes people think that they're, you know, they're so frustrated that they've vented out on the people who are on the defense team. I'm absolutely 100% sure that he could not get a better defense team in the UK, and they are thinking strategically and long term. This is not going to be a case that's going to be decided right now. And we will definitely see a high court hearing. We could potentially see a Supreme Court hearing, and we could also potentially see a European Human Rights Court hearing. So this is a long battle, and you know, we have to prepare for that. And hope that Julian has the strength, physically and mentally, to be able to sustain that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the film is The War on Journalism, The Case of Julian Assange. Juan, can you just tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your film, your websites, all of those things? We'll obviously put all that stuff in the show notes as well, but if you could just give people a brief rundown of where to find you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so there's going to be protests all around the world. I know that there's a big group in DC that's going to be protesting, but I think in several states there's going to be protests. So I urge everybody to go on Don't Extradite Assange and don'textraditeassange.org and find where their local protest is. Also, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm JL Passarelli, Passarelli, Passarelli. And you know, phone your representatives, write letters. This is a political case and will only be won with the political pressure, because the UK government, the Home Office, the Crown Prosecution Services, and the judges, they all have the power to right now say no and stop this. But they're not doing it because they are not feeling that there is enough political pressure. This is a political case, not a judicial case, and we have to make sure that everyone shouts out and does everything they can. You know, sign the petitions. There's the Amnesty International petition. There is the RSF petition. There's hundreds of petitions out there. They're all going to governments and government representatives, and your name counts. And share on your Twitters, on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever your social media of choice is, just share. There is people in any of the social medias that we know of that are part of a certain group, and you'll find your group in your area. Just get interested, get involved.
And again, as you mentioned in our discussion, and as you mentioned, or I'm sorry, somebody else mentions in your film, this isn't a partisan issue. This affects all of us, whether you're conservative, liberal, left, right, whatever kind of pigeonhole you want to throw out there. It doesn't matter. It affects the free speech, the freedom of
It literally affects the
information access.
future of democracy. It's that big. It's that big. I mean, I mean, I don't mean to be over dramatic, but this really is kind of a turning point in human history. This is going to determine a great deal of where our species heads in the future. So, I mean, yeah, get involved, get loud. I've been tweeting at celebrities for the past 24 hours or so, trying to get them to talk about Julian Assange. Whatever you can do, anybody can do anything. Talk to your grandma, talk to your neighbor. There's so many things you can do. Support journalists who are covering it. I have friends at Action for Assange who are in DC right now. You know, tweet about what they're doing and try to get people who are in the DC area to go and join them. There's so many things you can do. So yeah, it just really can't be overstated what a big issue this is. So yeah, Juan, oh, go ahead.
It's your right to know.
Yes.
If you want to know what your representatives are doing with your tax money, your vote, then you have to support this case. That's as simple as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. Juan, thank you so much for joining us. I think I could talk to you all day. The film is amazing. Everybody should go check it out. I'm Misty. That's Jesse. This is Facts on the Ground. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks, y'all.